Hey, I'm Alex back from Board Game Co, and this is Two Back or Not to Back, where we're going to dive through a variety of crowdfunding campaigns, talking about the campaigns, the games, the pledge levels, the add-ons, the stretch goals, all of that and more. We're going to go ahead and start off with, as usual, our Cult of the Now. Cult of the Now is a segment where we take a look at a currently available game, because as much as we are going to look at, 15-ish crowdfunding campaigns to go over today, this is a good reminder that you can always get great games now. In fact, today's game is going to be Cockroach Poker, which is a $10 game, a very affordable $10 game that I highly recommend checking this one out if you have a chance. I think it's a solid game. I do prefer Cockroach Poker Royale if you do have an opportunity to find that. It's a little harder to get your hands on it. This is going to be a little bit of a crazy bluffing game that you can check out a ton of content on now. You don't have to wait a year and a half. You don't have to spend a ton of money for the deluxe version. You don't have to rely on will you get it, will you not, any of that conversation. You can just go ahead and back it now. From that, we're going to go ahead and dive into the actual crowdfunding campaigns. Although, usual disclaimer, please keep in mind that I work for GameFound. I've been doing this series for over 4 years now, but I'm working for GameFound as CMO for a year and a half, and please take into account any bias that might present. But with that, let's go and start off with our crowdfunding campaign, starting with FLEUR, Extravagant Gardens in Rococo, France. This is from the same creators who brought you Botany. Duck Somnium, they brought you Botany, they had an incredibly successful campaign, and now they're coming back with FLEUR over here with 5,000 backers, 3 days to go. I don't know how I missed covering this the past 2 weeks, but I did miss covering this the past 2 weeks. $438,000 raised. FLEUR is going to be a garden game, another garden game-ish, of gathering various flowers, plants, things, all these various stuff you're going to be gathering while you're trying to attract guests to your party at the end of every single round. The game's going to play against a bunch of rounds. Every round you're trying to attract various people to your way as you try to build up your tableau in this game. I don't know tableau so much as cards, gathering the cards. The pledge levels for this one over here is going to be $39 for the basic version of the game. That's going to give you the FLEUR for 35% off. So you're saving $21 on the $60 MSRP. We're going to come back to that. Over here, well, actually, let's talk about it right now. You're going to save $21 off the $60 MSRP, but once you factor in shipping on that, in general, you can expect to see any game show up in online retail for somewhere around usually 20 to 30% off the actual MSRP. So a 35% discount is, on the one hand, a stronger than that 20 to 30% range. On the other hand, you're paying shipping as well, so that's where the trade-off is. You are paying more shipping in there, so you're actually not saving quite all that much. If you just want the basic version of the game, getting it in retail is probably cheaper and easier. Well, actually easier, but cheaper. We have FLEUR plus expansions over here for $75. It's going to be a further discount over there, $35 off $10 off the $110 MSRP. Again, factor in shipping. It's still a decent deal, but not an amazing deal. And that's going to be further going up with, we have FLEUR plus expansions, metal coins for $99, and then we have FLEUR plus expansions plus coins plus La Petite over here, which is a different kind of kid-friendly version of the game for $125 for that, and that's going to be the all-in over there. As far as should you back or should you not, will it hold its value? Hard to say 100%, but my guess is the higher pledge levels will. If you look at Botany and how well it's done in the secondhand market, Botany, their first game, it's already been delivered, been generally well received. It's a lighter game to be sure, so make sure you're the target audience for it, but overall, within the category and context of being a lighter game, it has been overall well received, and Botany is one that the higher pledge levels, those all-in stuff that's hard to get your hands on, those overall have held their value on the secondhand market. I think that will likely hold true for FLEUR as well. It's certainly not a guarantee. I mean, at the end of the day, this campaign is doing about a quarter as well as Botany, but even at a quarter as well, you're still talking about 5,000 backers, which is still not a small amount, and there's definitely a decent amount of interest pulled in there. So I think if you are interested in this one, I recommend either waiting for retail on the basic version if you're just interested in just dipping your feet into the water, or alternatively, if you do want absolutely everything, it does seem like there's a decent chance it'll hold its value on those higher pledges, although again, I'm extrapolating from Botany, there's never an apples-to-apples guarantee. From there we have Thunderstone Quest Rise and Fall from AEG. 1,600 backers, 5 days to go, $139,000 raised. Thunderstone Quest continues to bring back 2 new quests for the massively successful deck building game. Thunderstone has been around for quite some time. It's gone through multiple iterations from Thunderstone to Thunderstone Advanced and then Thunderstone Quest, which is currently the dominant version of the game. The game has been very well received in all its variations and implementations. Thunderstone Quest is the highest rated one. It's a very beautiful, pretty deck building game, which you're going to be building out your deck, then heading out to the dungeon and trying to hope your character combines the various things well enough to be able to go ahead and give you the edge and take out all the stuff you're facing along the way. The quests over here are going to be a variety of expansions, and by variety of expansions, I mean they have a variety of expansions. Thunderstone Quest has continuously put out more and more quests. I think this is like 17 and 18 is my guess. 16 and 17. This is quest 16 and 17, which will tell you how much content and expansions there are for the game. In fact, speaking of which over here, as far as the pledge levels, you have $50 for the starter set over here. That's going to be giving you the starter stone set for everything you need to jump into the game. We have $60 for the 2 quests, the 2 new quests, and we have $599 for the all-in, which weirdly enough is probably going to be our recommendation if you're getting it on crowdfunding at all. You see the basic quest over here coming at $60, they have a $20 savings compared to buying them at retail, which is theoretically true. The problem is the practical retail price on their quests is going to be roughly $32. Again, your store might depend, do your own research based on where you are, what online access you have, but in general, in the US, if you want to check out miniature market, the quests go for $32, which means you're looking at $64 with free shipping, assuming you hit that $100 mark, versus $60 plus shipping on the campaign page, which is going to be more expensive. So it's not a major difference in price point. If you just want to guarantee faster access right away to the newest content in the Thunderstone universe, then by all means, getting it on Kickstarter makes sense. If you are concerned about getting the best possible price point, waiting for it to show up at retail does make sense there as well. The thing I'd be mindful of is the quests generally don't have a very long retail release. It's very hard to find most of the quests because there's so many of them, they come out, they show up, and then they frequently go out of print and aren't available. So if you're someone who's trying to hunt down a bunch of quests, again, your options are kind of backing it now or keeping your eye out and getting it later to save a few bucks, which you have to choose which one matters more to you. And if you are someone who kind of wants it all, well, because of the fact that it's hard to get your hands in it, these quests over here, the all-in bundle is weirdly enough a reasonable offering if you're someone who's trying to get your hands on all the content, just because practically speaking, there's like no retail stores that I can find that have access to all their content. So if you are someone who's trying to hop on it all, your options are the secondhand market where you try to find the right pledge level or whoever it is that has what you need, or alternatively just going all in on this. I do not recommend spending $600 on any game you haven't played and know you enjoy. I think that's, a lot. Dip your feet into the waters. You don't need to jump straight in. Keep in mind, they do keep putting out new quests. So even if you are someone who's interested in this $600 bundle, I'd still recommend you try to hunt down either the secondhand market or just a base game, or go to a convention and make sure you play it. But give yourself a time or opportunity to try the base game, and there'll always be a future crowdfunding campaign where you can then decide to go all in. I think going from 0 to 600, especially when you don't have to and that content is available elsewhere, I think it's just unnecessary to go ahead and do so, even though it is arguably the right deal if you know you want the game and you're trying to hunt down all these quests otherwise. From there, we're going to go ahead and move on to Ironwood, which is a weird campaign because it's a pre-order and it's a pre-order that turned crowdfunding. Ironwood is launched on GameFound and was going to be a pre-order campaign. You can see right now on the page over here it says pre-order. The original plan was to be a pre-order. I believe they're aiming for delivery in September, so it's like, it's basically done. Close to delivering already. It's basically just a pre-order, exactly what it sounds like. This is a pre-order campaign. It's some type of thing that they'd make available on the web store, on their own website, but they made it available on GameFound as a pre-order at first, and they have all this covered in the update, by the way, but effectively they decided that there's too much visibility options in crowdfunding, and the more interaction. They want to kind of a little bit more than what a pre-order offers, so they ran it as a crowdfunding campaign while still being very clear that this is meant to be a pre-order. This is basically a game without a ton of rewards, with no stretch goals, none of the extra stuff. There's foil cards, so there's going to be some foil cards you can get your hands on, and we'll talk about the game as well in a second, but effectively this is more of a pre-order campaign that happens to be running under the crowdfunding term as opposed to the pre-order term. Hopefully that all makes sense. As far as Ironwood itself, Ironwood is going to be a game of the Woodwalkers versus the Ironclad, a two-player asymmetric game of two different factions, each with their own different way that they win, hence the whole asymmetric title, and it's going to be a card-driven system. You're going to have 3 basic cards every single round that represent some of the core functions you need to progress in the game, but you're going to have better cards that you're constantly drawing into, but those are limited. When you spend them, you lose them, as opposed to your core cards, when you spend them, you get them right back. So you're constantly trying to play around with when do you want to spend that slightly better card that might be a better fit for the situation, but you're also losing it in turn. And these cards are very helpful for the actual actions on the card, or even just for the attributes whenever you get involved in a clash, in a combat in the game. And so you're playing this puzzle of a card-driven system, trying to be mindful of your economy of the cards you're utilizing, while trying to tactically position yourself to either, as the Ironclad, to build 3 forges on various outer cities, or alternatively, as the Woodwalkers, to go ahead and gather 3 visions and pull them from the forest. You attempt to accomplish your goals, very asymmetric. There is a solo mode for each faction, so if you're playing this game solo, you can play it as the Ironclad or as the Woodwalkers. By the way, every single time I'm always tempted to say the Ironwood because it says Ironwood, but it's the Ironclad and the Woodwalkers in this tactical, asymmetric, 2-player, or solo-driven game. That's basically the idea of the campaign. As far as the pledge levels over here, we have a pledge level for a simple 50 euro for the game. That's going to be plus shipping on top of that. And then as far as the pre-order benefits over here, you're basically getting 10 euro off. And that's not entirely 10 euro off, it's really 5 euro off the MSRP, although usually, if you've been watching this series long enough, you know that MSRP is in most publishers, MSRP does not actually represent the actual price. There are a handful of publishers where it does, but in most cases, the games are going to be available at retail at a cheaper price point than the MSRP. So that $10 off, 10 euro off, is not really a strong saving. The real thing to be mindful here as to why you might consider this pre-order as opposed to just waiting for retail is going to be the promo pack, which is valued at 5 euro, but it's less about the value and more about the fact that it's going to be harder to get your hands on those foil cards over here. So if you want the alternate art cards with unique names, holofoil finish, alternate art, all of that for each faction, if you're looking for that, this might be the best way to guarantee that, and I don't know what the aftermarket pricing on that will be, meaning if you miss this campaign and you're like, I really love this game, I want those alternate art arts. How available will they be? I'm not quite clear. And what's the price point on it going to be? That's very, very dependent. On the one hand, Mindclash has a very strong reputation. They put out a lot of good games. Personally, I'm a huge fan of Ironwood. You can check out the my review of the game. I think it's a great game, really solid. Very much enjoyed it, at least for my play so far. So the question will be, what's that interest on these promo foil cards going to be, and what's the availability? That's the main thing that's going to determine the value you're getting there. And that's relevant because otherwise, frankly, this is not a good price time to buy the game. Because this game over here with a €10 off, and again, it's 5 and 5 really, it just versus the fact that you're also going to be paying extra in shipping, and even then the game will probably be available cheaper. This is the kind of thing, if you're just waiting to wait for your local online retailer, you probably can get your hands on it cheaper. So my recommendation for this one is, as much as I think you should get the game, I'm a huge fan of the game, I think it's an excellent game, I think it's, what do we have over here? Mike's I like One Stop Color Shop a lot. I respect his taste a lot, so I'm always interested in his quotes. Ironwood is a quick, tense, exciting skirmish game. I love the asymmetry in the factions and the variety play to play. So, it's a solid testimonial, but honestly, testimonials, there's only something that there's certain testimonials that will really hook me, but I'd say most testimonials don't. The practical reality is most testimonials, like even a testimonial like this that sounds good, you can find testimonials like that from me that might make it sound better than it's intended. When things are pulled from a video out of context, or even when you're just giving a nice fluff thing, don't get me wrong, if you ever see a testimonial from me, I meant what I said, but out of context, there's a big difference between this is a good game and this was a great game, and I just don't think you always get that in tone. Make no mistake, I don't know if Mike loves this game, hates this game, probably doesn't hate the game. I don't know if Mike Kelly likes the game or loves the game. That's the kind of thing I'd watch the video to get a full sense of. Either way, past that, back to what I was saying over here. As far as getting the game, my instinct is that, assuming you have access to online retail wherever, I would probably wait for online retail. I think you're probably going to get a better price point. You'll miss out on the foil promo cards, but I think the amount extra you're paying for those probably just isn't worth it. It is a very solid game. I definitely recommend getting your hands on it. To me, it's more about where I recommend getting your hands on it as opposed to getting it or not. Moving on over here, we have Warlord Saga of the Storm CCG. We have 1,100 backers, $427,000 raised, 10 days to go. This is a bringing back Warlord, which is like Warlord, the game you know how to play. I don't know. They have a whole thing about how they have a whole tagline. I can't remember the tagline. What's the tagline? There's a tagline somewhere about like Warlord, the game you know how to play, the game you already know how to play, which is interesting considering I've never played it, so I'm sure there's an audience for it, but like, to me, like, there's so many popular TCGs out there, like Pokemon and Magic the Gathering and Yu-Gi-Oh! There's so many great games out there that are such a huge base. I don't know what the size of Warlord is, so maybe I'm just completely ignorant as to how large this game was, but they have this whole pitch of the game you already know how to play, although to be fair, that's due to its use of a D20 and popular TTRPG mechanics, so they're basically saying less that it's popular and more that you basically already know. That said, they do have a great 8-minute video you can check out over here that will teach you how to play, and as much as it's the game you already know how to play, I know more after watching this video than I did beforehand. Before watching the video, the only thing I really knew is that there was a D20, you rolled it, and then resolved stuff. That's not enough to know a game. Don't get me wrong, this is me just nitpicking on the tagline, the game you already know how to play, followed by an 8-minute video of how to play it, which actually taught me I'm being unnecessarily nitpicky about a small line. But if you do watch this video, and I do recommend if you want to get a sense for the game, you'll get a stronger sense of how the game plays. There is going to be that D20, there's going to be combat resolution, rolling the dice, adding modifiers. You're going to have 3 rows of cards. You're going to have your Warlord plus 2 rows of cards. You're going to treat it a little bit like a battlefield, so there's adjacency, there's range, there's all these things, there's keywords, there's mechanics at play. Yeah. I should take a break. When I sit there and say there's mechanics at play, that's not really helpful. Anyways, if you watch the video, you'll get a good general sense of it, but you are trying to utilize your abilities, you're trying to utilize cards in your hand, where you'll be able to use them to be able to re-roll, or protect yourself, or do whatever. So it's a card-driven system with a row of cards that on the table you'll be utilizing to protect your Warlord, and hopefully take out your opponent, occasionally attacking, putting wounds on the cards, stuff like that, until you eventually win the game. That's going to be Warlord over here. This is bringing Warlord back, but Warlord already existed. I believe Tom Vassell in particular has always loved this game. I put it in some top lists. I know he's had this in lists somewhere. I don't remember if it's top 100, but it's a game that I know he's talked about. It should be reprinted, which, by the way, Vassell's law, all games will be reprinted, according to Tom. So that's a thing. Past that over here, we have the game itself is being reprinted. It is compatible with the original game, so if you do have original Warlord content, this is compatible. Yes, you can go on eBay and find really cheap Warlord decks for like $2 or something like that. Then it doesn't seem to be super available, but it doesn't seem to be super expensive either. As far as the pledge levels on this campaign over here, we have $100 for the starting price point over here, which is going to give you 6 50-card pre-constructed faction decks, each including 1 starter exclusive extended art card, 1 randomized booster pack, and 1 D20. That's going to be at an MSRP of $120, which right about now is the time to remember that that $100 and $120, especially once you factor in shipping, is not going to be much of a deal at all, although there are reasons to consider this, because you are getting stretch goals during the campaign. The stretch goals might be the thing that makes the difference. difference. We have Warlord over here, a starter bundle, box of greed and a booster box for 300. We have an Overlord for 460. We have the Dragon Lord for 2,500, and we have the Medusa Lord for $10,000. I'm not going to go heavily into all of those. It's a lot of ways of getting into a TCG if you want to. What I will focus on over here is if you scroll down, there are going to be stretch goals that are being added, and those are important because that's the only real reason I can think to get this now as opposed to getting it later, based on the MSRP at play. And so we have over here, you can check out these various stretch goals, you can see various things being added, unlocked, there's social goals, there's monetary goals, and there's hopefully going to be continue to be more and more unlocked as they go through the campaign, and you'll be able to see all the stuff, and that's going to be the main aspect there. As far as will it hold its value, because there's two different conversations, best price point now and will it hold its value, I'm skeptical it will. From what I can see of the Warlord TCG on the second-hand market right now, it doesn't seem to have a huge offering, so as much as I think this will have appeal to people, I'm not seeing that there's a huge aftermarket on this one. Maybe this will revive it, I don't know for sure. Also, fun fact, let's go back to Thunderstone Quest, because I noticed on Thunderstone Quest, they have this little thing over here. If we scroll back here, we have this. Warlord, Saga of the Storm. They have like a bunch of cards from Warlord Saga of the Storm that maybe this is an update that I didn't see as to why. They don't really explain the whole why aspect, but this is a thing. And it's not the same publisher, at least it doesn't seem to be. We have Warlord Saga of the Storm over here from what was it? Oh my gosh, it's not scrolling up. Let's scroll up over here. From Kingswood Games, so I don't know. There must be some association there. Anyways, that can be Warlord Saga of the Storm. Skeptical will hold its value, but if you are getting the stretch goals and stuff like that, that might be your reason to try to get your hands in it. Otherwise, I think you should just wait to retail safely. We have Degenesis Clan Wars over here from CMON. Degenesis Clan Wars over here, the lowest performing CMON title, possibly. I'd have to look at all the titles, but definitely in that lower range. Like this is doing less ideally than Mordred as well, which was not a particularly high funding campaign. We have 775 backers. Oh, and disclaimer, Board Game Co. did do sponsored content around this game. We have 775 backers over here, $191,000 raised, 12 days left to go. And Degenesis, and it's interesting because I didn't know how this campaign would do. We'll talk about it in a second. I will say from my own backseat, backseat driver, peanut gallery, whatever you want to call it, from my own side of things, I was uncertain what the demand for this game was. I know that for myself, as a fairly large CMON fan who is interested in most of the titles, this one didn't pull me in, but it is primarily because it's based on an existing system. This RPG, Degenesis, you can check that out if you want to know. Very popular, very big thing, but to me it didn't pull me in because it just didn't pull me in initially. I've played the game, I do enjoy the game, but not necessarily in love with it. I do enjoy it, but I'm curious as far as my big thing was how much this is appealing to the typical CMON fan versus how much this is appealing to the Degenesis fan, and what's that overlap in audiences. And the answer, don't get me wrong, with $200,000 raised, 775 backers, it's doing well, but not well relative to a typical CMON title. As far as the campaign itself, and we'll go through a bunch of things over here, but there was something else I was going to say, but I don't remember what it was, so we'll hopefully remember before the end over here. Anyways, as far as the campaign itself, Degenesis. Degenesis is based on the RPG. You don't need to have any experience with the RPG. I can tell you that, having played this game, you definitely don't need any experience with the RPG to play this title. The game is going to be a 1 versus many experience, so it's a 2 to 5 player game, 1 versus many. I've seen a lot of people upset that there's no solo mode. I mean, I have nothing to do with that, but they've noticed there's no solo mode. But over here, we have a 2 to 5 player game over here. It's a 1 versus many. One player is controlling the hostile, who in the core box over here is going to be controlling the Cockroach Clan effectively, and then you have the operatives who are being controlled by either 1 to 4 other players, and the operatives are going to be coming, there's a whole bunch of operatives, I think there's 13 operatives in the core box, plus there's stretch goals as well, and there's terrain stretch goals and all that, and the basic idea is you're going through a sequence of missions, a sequence of scenarios in which you're going to have the operative and the operatives and the hostile facing off against each other, each with their own goals, and yes, you can sometimes accomplish both your goals in the scenario, and how you accomplish those goals will determine how you move into the next scenario when you're playing the game, and then past that you're going to go through the sequence and arc, and ultimately see who wins in the end of it. That's the basic idea of the game. The operative the hostiles relying on greater numbers. They're called threats, where all these tokens are going to be face down the board. You don't see them. The operatives don't know who they are. They have to scout out what these tokens are. Are they traps? Are they decoys? Are there various enemy units? And then from there, the hostiles trying to overwhelm them with superior force, because ultimately, otherwise, the operatives are going to win from their better combination abilities and more action economy. So it's a little balance of trying to figure out your own competitive advantage in this game as you go through that arc of missions, as you go through the sequence of missions. As far as the pledge levels, and we can scroll through a whole lot of miniatures over here. This does have CMON's typical, like, miniature production. We got stretch goals. We got optional buys. Well, optional buys, we'll get to it. So we have a variety of stretch goals over here. Lots of daily stretch goals. Most of them not yet revealed because, well, we haven't gotten up to those days yet. And we have the various stretch goals that have been revealed, from 3D terrain to more operatives. We have Operative Severin, Operatives Decoy 5, more 3D terrain machine guns, the Operative Falberg, Judgment, 3D terrain, full plastic upgrade. This is a big one over here because upgrading your little cardboard tokens to full plastic tokens, which is nice. I mean, I think would have been cooler, but but the having heft and chunk to them is a nice thing from having played the game. We have a full art Apocalyptic Tarot deck. I believe this is a follower gift, so I think if you follow the campaign, you did not have to spend $5 in this, but if you didn't follow the campaign, you may have to spend $5 in it. And that's basically it. We also have, as far as pledge levels, we have the two boxes over here. We have the Optives expansion and the 3D Terrain expansion. They're being added over there. And then we have the Optive starting roster, which is going to be 13 different operatives to scroll through. Each operative has their own combination of abilities, their own combination of items, their own player board, their abilities, which are their potentials. The potentials are the abilities that are also your life force. So as you take wounds in the game, you're basically losing your abilities, and then there's the various equipment they have, which can be damaged in the game. You'll have to repair all that. That's basically the idea over here. We have the tons of miniatures and swarmers and fighters and warriors and all these various things from champions, the enemy champions you'll be facing off against, the kings over here. There's a whole nother level. We have our kings to go through, but that is basically it, which should take us to the pledge levels. Where's the pledge levels? We have gameplay, but this is going to be a long campaign to scroll through. I could just go through the sidebar, but I'm just doing this right now, and then we got this far over here. Where's the pledge levels? We're going to go here. I think I went too far. Anyways, pledge levels. We have two pledge levels. We have $125 for the frontline recruit over here. That's going to be the core box plus all unlocked stretch goals. So that is giving you the operative expansion, as well as the 3D terrain expansion. And then we have for $245, we have the Apocalypse Deluxe, which is an interesting one that I don't think I've seen CMON do before, which is fascinating. This is basically the core box plus all gameplay expansions plus all unlocked stretch goals, but it's being done day one without you seeing those things. It's a fascinating approach, which it's so interesting. So CMON in general gets a lot of flack for a lot of different things. And I don't know if this is them trying to react to that and put this on the table, but they get a lot of flack for different things that they've constantly tried addressing over the years. Anything from, hey, the game's available at retail first, and then suddenly they start telling you, hey, they tell you when the games will be available at retail first. Things like their shipping tables. They got, they had complaints from people who were like, hey, the shipping estimates are off. So they upped the shipping estimates, but they, unfortunately, that resulted in people saying the shipping's too expensive, but at least that means you have the information. So, and I believe they've been working on shipping prices as well. But this one over here, there is always that complaint of people who are like, you're roping me in slowly, you don't tell me the full amount. This one is an interesting way of preserving the mystery of the campaign while telling you the full amount up front, which is fascinating. I am curious whether we'll see this in further titles from CMON, or whether this is unique to this campaign, but I thought it was interesting. What's also interesting is you have a lot of people, we have 622 people who are backing this all in without knowing what's included. Now granted, this is on GameFound, or any platform for that matter, you can go ahead and just cancel your pledge at any point, so it's not like you're not locking yourself into the unknown. You're just kind of, it's a vote of confidence, as it were. It's a vote of confidence in the game, which, speaking of which, over here, with 150 people backing the Frontline Recruit and 622 backing the Apocalypse Deluxe, that is a large amount of people who are definitely here for the vote of confidence, which is fascinating to me. But, I mean, it makes sense. If I was interested, I'd be going all in as well. And that's basically what we have over here. As far as should you back it, should you not, will it hold its value? Honestly, this is the first time in a long time I've hesitated on a CMON title. You see, what's interesting here is we have the lowest amount of interest present in this game compared to most CMON titles, which does put it into a little bit of a, does everything I know to be true around a CMON game, does it hold true in this campaign? On a general note, CMON games, as much as there can be a lot of complaining or frustration about any number of different things, the games generally are well received, and the games generally do hold their value on the second-hand market. So I've always valued CMON campaigns for a variety of reasons. Not just are they usually to my own personal interests, but even more than that, if they're not for me, I can almost always turn around and sell the game and get my money back, and I got to try the game out, risk-free, hassle-free. Well, not hassle-free, you still have to sell the game, but it gives you a lower barrier to entry of trying the games, which in general is why I focus on holding the value, not to make money. It's not a good place to make money, but rather to focus on the ability to try different things with the flexibility to be able to move on from it while not losing your shirt if it didn't work for you. So that's usually been the case with the CMON title. This time is a little different just because it is the lowest amount of interest I've seen. There still is a ton of extras, which kind of has me in a place where I still think it will hold its value. Just because there's less people interested, 776 people is not a small amount. That number will grow by the end of the campaign. A large number of those are just their devoted people, which makes me wonder how many of those people are coming from CMON fans versus how many people are coming from Degenesis fans. But whatever that pool is, there's always going to be more people who discover that market after the fact, whether you're discovering Degenesis, whether you're discovering CMON games, and so I think that the amount of content they're giving still makes it the one that I think it's still the one that I still think it's a game that will hold its value, but there is that back of my mind worry that because this is the lowest amount of demand I've seen in a CMON title, perhaps I'm wrong. So time will tell on this one, but I still think it will hold its value just with the amount of content that they're giving. We have Stupor Mundi from Quid Games over here. 1,243 backers, 120,000 euro raised, 12 days left to go over here. Stupor Mundi is coming from Quina Games. It's their newest, well, Quina title over here. They have a bunch of deluxe versions on this campaign. They're all going to be different than the retail editions, and this is a new Master Print series. The game is going to involve you managing a little rondel over here as you move your ship around the board. There you can pay to move further, and that's going to determine the access to the various things you have access to in that round. You're going to be playing cards as well. The cards either for the action on the face of the card, or playing the cards face down to be able to activate the place where you played the card instead. From there, you're trying to gather as many points as possible. The game is available on Board Game Arena. You can see it on Board Game Arena if you want to give it a shot or check it out. This is something they did back in the day with Carnegie. With Carnegie, they did it back in the day. They had it on Board Game Arena doing the crowdfunding campaign, which overall worked well for them. And I'd say overall seems to be working well for them here as well. In general, the threat or fear of something like that is that people play the game and they're like, oh, it's not that great, and that can always hurt your campaign. In this case, overall feedback on Board Game Geek from forums as well as the reviews seem to be generally positive. You know, it didn't work for everyone, but I'd say overall seems to be generally positive, which again does validate the whole, it gives people the confidence that they can go ahead and jump in to try the game if they want to try the game. It's on BGA. Try it right now. See if it's for you, and then if it's not, at least you know, and you can save yourself the 59 to 89 euro depending which pledge level you get. Speaking of pledge levels over here, we have the 59 euro over here, and keep in mind all of these are deluxe GameFound exclusive editions of the game. There is going to be, they do have retail plans. They don't yet know what those look like, but it's going to be none of these, at least from what I can see. But even so, with the Vassal Edition, which is going to be the most basic straightforward, we have 59 euro for the features the wooden castle pieces, includes both expansions. There are 2 expansions, by the way. For the Baron Edition, you get PVC castle pieces for 69 euro, so an extra 10 euro. And if you pay an extra 20 euro on top of that, you're getting the features the PVC castle pieces with Sundrop as well. So that's going to give you an extra 20 euro to get those all Sundrop, which to me feels a bit high for the amount you're getting over there, but if you want that, that's going to be the way to lock that in. We also have add-ons. We have a set of 45 metal coins over here for 20 euro, and the FedEx Sun Gates mini expansion for 5 euro. Those are going to be the additional things you can get over there. As far as should you back or should you not, will it hold its value? It's not a perfect comparison, but the biggest thing I would compare it to is to Carnegie. Now, Carnegie, I do believe, and this is going by my recollection, so it's not perfect over here, I do believe Carnegie was received better doing that, doing the crowdfunding campaign. Meaning, as much as I said that this is available on BGA, and overall feedback, that was a loud whistling noise, and overall feedback on the campaign the game has been positive, I think Carnegie was even more well received as far as the feedback. It was generally more well liked, so it's not a perfect apples to apples, but it is close in that range, as far as price point, as far as the type of game, as far as the publisher, as far as the target audience, all of those things. And Carnegie did a generally good job holding its value. Not perfect, over time it's definitely shifted, but it's one that you probably could back the game, and you might have lost your shipping price, but you got most of it back if it wasn't a game for you. I think Stupor Mundi is likely in the similar category. I think it's slightly less popular than Carnegie. I think it will be slightly less popular than Carnegie, but overall I think it's going to be in a similar category. So if you want this game, your options are either getting the cheapest version at retail, which if you want to get the cheapest version, you should go ahead and wait for retail and just get it there. Alternatively, if you want the deluxe versions over here, there's a decent chance you can get most of your money back, probably not all of your money back if it's a game that does not work for you. Moving on over here, we have BERSERKERS Chaos Extensions by KUGO Alone Editions. BERSERKERS is back. 8-1 backers, 13 days to go, $23,000 raised. We have BERSERKERS over here, which is a solo game of using your champions and whatnot to light the fires of Odin or something like that. I don't know the exact gameplay over here. This is coming from Josef Fari over here, who generally does a lot of solo-friendly games, and a lot of solo-friendly games that usually are very well received. Their ratings of them are very, very positive, and they usually have small print runs and lack of availability that usually makes them hold their value overall pretty decently. We have the Chaos extension of this game over here, which is going to be $17. That's going to give you a module-based expansion, a variety of modules you can go ahead and mix and match in different ways to go ahead and improve the gameplay on the original BERSERKERS. But there's also a Way of the Samurai Roll and Write for $18. It's going to be a different game of his that he's doing a roll and write version of it for $18 if you want the Way of the Samurai Roll and Write. We have both those for $32, or if you want the BERSERKERS plus Chaos for $54, or all three for $65. Meaning if you want the base game, those last two pledges are going to be for you over there. And then for shipping over here, shipping overall looks pretty reasonable as far as the price points on these, which brings us to the whole should you back it, should you not, will it hold its value? And the short version is kind of yes-ish, not really holding its value so much as hard to get your hands on. This game, if you look up the games, if you look up his games in general, they generally have a very low aftermarket availability. The games are usually well rated. Not a ton of people selling them. I don't know why this is, but they're very hard to find a lot of copies or historical data, either on eBay or on Board Game Geek, for many of his games. And so it's less about holding its value and more about the fact that if you want his games, usually this is the best way to guarantee getting them. I don't know if they'll hold their value because I can't find a ton of sales data on them, but I do know if you want them, this might be your best or only opportunity to guarantee that access past waiting for future campaigns and hoping like some of these things are included. Like even right now, we have BERSERKERS being included from the original campaign. So there are times and things like that. But yeah, I'm not confident in the value aspect either way, but I would say that if you want this game, this is probably the best way to go ahead and get your hands on it. And that's going to be that so far, which means it's time for a bit of a mid-video break, and it's time for thank our partner of today's video, Mint Mobile. If you've been following my channel for any amount of time, you've probably seen that I've been recommending Mint Mobile for quite some time now. I've been using the service myself for over a year and a half, after using the service for a few months when they reached out to me and started working with me on these videos. But in general, I am a huge fan of the service. I'm not just someone who's, I'm not just a partner of today's video, but I'm an active user of their service and a fan of their price points, their availability. They have the nation's largest network, or one of the nation's largest networks over here, and switching to their service takes you 10 minutes or less. Like, it is genuinely, it's one of the things, if you go ahead and go through the process. I did it one time when I was finally switching or deciding to switch. I literally just went on the site and just started going through it, and within like 5 minutes the whole process was done. It is simple, it is clean. You can go ahead and use one of their phones and get some sort of deal there, or alternatively you can bring your own network, bring your own phone to the network when you go ahead and use them. And you're getting all of this, by the way, for $15 a month for any of their plans right now. You can go ahead and get the 5 GB plans for $15 a month. I found personally that works for most of my needs. I did finally upgrade after having 1 or 2 months where I ran over, but for a long time I used 5 GB and it's plenty for all my data needs. Currently I'm at 15 GB, but you can go ahead and get any of their plans for $15 a month to try it out and see if it's for you. It's got to be cheaper than most of what most of you are paying outside of there. And then additionally, on top of that, they currently have an offering for 6 months of Paramount Plus Essential plan on them if you go ahead and jump in it, giving you even more reason to go ahead and check them out. If you are interested in using Mint Mobile, go ahead and use my link down below so they know I sent you. And with that, let's go ahead and talk about our next campaign, Rebirth Limited Edition. Rebirth, 3,300 backers, 16 days to go, $170,000 raised. We have Reina Knizia meets Mighty Boards over here with Rebirth, a tile laying game that's going to have you laying tiles. That's the basic idea of the game. You're laying tiles. I mean, there's more to it. You basically have a few maps over here. You have the base game map. You have, I think it's Ireland, I think is the second map over here. But you basically have these maps where you're placing down. You're going to have tokens and boards. You have a board, you have your whole pile of tokens. Every round you draw a token, and then you choose where that token goes. That's the tile you're laying in the game, basically. The tiles are either going to be settlement tiles or alternatively farm tiles. And where you place those tiles is going to be both an area control puzzle as well as a location puzzle, both because you're trying to get positioning around castles for points in the game, as well as positioning around cathedrals, which will give you end game scoring opportunities. So you're trying to balance all of that, as well as the general tile placement in general, because you're trying to get points. When you place farms next to each other, you get increasingly more points as you do so. And then there's also the Ireland board over here, which gives you some switching it up. Instead of cathedrals, they have round towers, which have their own different way that they operate, and different public mission cards over here. So you have a kind of small twist on the gameplay if you want more going on there. The Ireland game makes the game more advanced, competitive, varied, open-ended, and interactive. Sounds great. I didn't have a chance to play the Ireland game. I do have coverage of the game. You can check it out. I only played the basic version because that's all we had at the time, but the Ireland does sound like it does a little more, which is interesting there. That's basically the core idea of the game. It's a tile-laying game where you're trying to fight for conditioning while you're positioning, while trying to be mindful of a lot of different things in the game. As far as the rewards over here, we have $49 for the Rebirth Limited Edition with Kickstarter exclusive and all that. We have $245 for the group pledge, and that's kind of what you're looking at over here. So not a ton of options there outside of the $49 for the $49 for the limited edition of Rebirth. And it's going to give you all the limited upgrades and whatnot. This is going to be the deluxe version effectively, as opposed to, and you can see the Kickstarter exclusive, the various things you're going to be getting across the course of the campaign, as opposed to waiting to retail and getting this cheaper, because this game will almost certainly have a retail availability. Which means just a little should you back it, should you not, will hold its value. And this is probably most akin to Hamlet. And that Hamlet in general was a very popular game from Mighty Boards. They've had 2 crowdfunding campaigns around it. Generally, it was very well received overall. It is a little on the lighter side, but overall it's a very beautiful game, has gotten generally pretty positive ratings. And Rebirth, I think, is going to be falling into that same vein. They're attracting the same type of audience with it. I think it's a little more straightforward. I think the strategic depth is definitely there, but it is on the lighter strategic depth of a tile-laying game, especially for Reina Knizia. He pumps out a lot of games, and I think Rebirth is a very satisfying one. As far as how it's going to do, in general, I think that if you look at Hamlet overall, as far as should you back it, should you not, will it hold its value? If you look at Hamlet, Hamlet did not do a great job holding its value. It's been very well received. The first campaign did great, the second campaign did great, so overall it has been very well received, but as far as the aftermarket in it, definitely not one that I think was worth getting in that sense. Your options were either cheaper at retail, or paying a bit more in the crowdfunding campaign to get what you want, but not in a way that held its value down the road. As far as this campaign, my assumption is going to fall into a similar vein. I just think it's a very similar game, very similar audience. It's not doing as well as Hamlet. I think Hamlet had like 9,000 backers. it says like 3,000. Granted, with 16 days to go, they'll almost certainly cross the 5,000 marker, but still not as much demand as there was for Hamlet. But I think it's a very nice game. I think it's beautiful looking. I think it's charming. I think if you're interested in this kind of game, by all means, but it's one that I do think it is less likely to hold its value just based on how well Hamlet did overall. Moving on over here, we have How to Save a World. 884 backers, $60,000 raised. How to Save a World from KTBG, not from KTBG, wrong company, from Burnt Island Games, the sister company to KTBG, Kids Table Board Game over here. And of course, disclaimer on this one, Board Game Co. did do sponsored content on this game. We have How to Save a World is basically a game of worker placement, primarily with a little bit of stock taking aspect going on. The general idea, the theme of it is how to save a world. You have a world that's falling apart, and there's 3 ways to save the world. We can either blast the asteroid from space, we can put up giant space shields, or we can evacuate everyone off the planet. But the problem is, as you're playing through the game, players are kind of investing into those 3 different lanes, and depending on how well those lanes were invested in, will effectively determine a bit of a stock-taking dynamic where you're investing in something that'll give you a payoff on points. You're gonna get points for everything either way, but the way that you actually choose to save the world, the thing that is the way the world gets saved, is going to be where the biggest chunk of points gets handed out. Meanwhile, along the way, you're engaging in a worker placement puzzle where you have different locations on the board, and as you place a worker, sometimes they stay in the same kind of general area, other times they move, they shuttle from area to area. So you're trying to be mindful of where your workers are at any given point, because that's going to be an essential aspect that you're trying to balance as you play through it. You're also dealing with a lot of cards in both your scientific tableau. On your personal player board, you can have a ton of abilities you can utilize in different ways that'll make you stronger. There's also a ton of cards you can buy that'll give you a variety of access to ways to score more points, ways to do more things, ways to cash in for more symbols. There's a lot of things going on in this game, a ton of stuff giving you both variety, gameplay, just a lot of different stuff in this worker placement, semi-stock taking. It's not really stock taking, but I guess it's area control. It is probably a form of area control. I don't even know. The way they have the whole How to Save a World, both thematically and mechanically linked, has me a little confused, but overall it does work as a system. But anyways, that's the core idea of the game itself. That's How to Save a World, and they have 2 main pledges over here, 2 main options. They have the Standard Edition for 70 Canadian, 51 US, and they have the Kickstarter Edition for 99 Canadian, 73 US. And in general, the usual thing I'd say on most Standard Editions of the game, which is if you look at this one overall, if you look at the Standard Edition of the game, most of Burnt Island Games' Standard Editions are usually better to get at retail. If you're just interested in the basic version of the game, wait till retail, and again, location dependent. Sometimes you don't have access to it, so getting on the crowdfunding campaign makes sense, but for most people, you're going to want to wait for retail if you're just getting the basic game. Versus, their games usually do not have that high a price bump, so over here we're talking about $22 as a price bump to get the Kickstarter version of the game. That's usually where it's much more worth getting, just based on the amount of stuff they shove into the deluxe versions of the game versus the price point on them. So if you want that, that's where it's a lot more worth considering. As far as what's actually in those, let's go ahead and show. They have like a no stretch goal thing. They're just kind of saying, here's all the stuff, day 1. This is what the game is. But we have over here, we have the asteroid. This is the basic version. We have the asteroid, the start badge, reward tiles, the game boards, all the usual things over here. I'm not going to heavily focus on them because we're going to focus on the Standard Edition in a second. Instead, for the Kickstarter Edition, we have the next level asteroid marker, which is going to be a little bit elevated, making it float off the ground to an extent. We have the upgrade recess floor player boards. We have the real metal start badge, the upgrade recess markers, the tech lab extensions, mini expansion, the addition molded insert, and again, you're getting all this translucent cubes, upgraded task force branding, upgrade unique landers, all of that for the extra $22, which is a decent amount of stuff to pull from the games. That's basically what we have over there, which means it's time for the should you back it, should you not, will hold its value. The short version of this one is Burnt Island Games. I keep trying to say KTBG. Burnt Island Games is always in an interesting space with their games. Their games, I think they've done incredibly well with their Fall of the Mountain King line, and they've done incredibly well with their Endeavor line. But some of their other games, I think this is probably most akin to In Too Deep. That's the tricky part. Meaning in general, they've had games in between that, despite being generally well received, very well produced, didn't have the same level of appeal that some of the other games pulled in. And in that case, something like How to Save a World, because of the amount of backers in this one, I think this one, and despite it being, for me, it's one of my favorite, the favorite might be a little, because I really like Fall of the Mountain King. I definitely enjoy this one a lot, but despite my personal opinion of the game, it's one that isn't pulling in the same level of pull that some of the other titles are, which makes me compare it a bit more to In Too Deep. And if you're comparing it to In Too Deep, comparing it to there on the secondhand market there, the secondhand market on their game did not do amazingly well. You can regularly pick up the deluxe versions of In Too Deep, much cheaper than what you would pay for it on crowdfunding, compared to some of the other titles where they did hold their value better on the secondhand market. So as far as availability, getting the deluxe version of the game, so it's going to be the easiest way to get your hands on the deluxe version of the game for a reasonable extra cost. But but as far as holding its value in the secondhand market, I am skeptical it will, just based on the current demand on the game. Moving on over here, we have Hex Effects, a spellbinding card game. 921 backers, 18 days to go, $35,000 raised. Hex Effects is basically a game of putting down a bunch of hexes in front of you. You are hexed, you are cursed, you have a bunch of cards, you put them down in front of you, and now you're trying to cure yourself. To that end, you're going to have a bunch of cures that you can go ahead and, well, cure yourself. But as you play those cures, you make yourself vulnerable to other hexes from the other players. Basically, every cure has side effects, and the side effects in this case are other players attacking you with more hexes. There's going to be a lot of card play, lots of, playing disasters on other players, lots of rejecting those disasters with other cards, while eventually one player is eventually able to cure all their hexes, and that player wins the game. That's the core idea of the game. The Alchemist Pledge over here is going to be $20 for that basic, the game, Hex Effects. We have the Sorcerer, which is going to be giving you $55 for a bunch of upgrades, including the playmat, the fuzzy patches, things like that being added to over here. We have the Doctor, $55 for the effects mechanic for all the side effects games and the booster expansion pack, and then basically everything over here for $100 of all their games. That's basically the idea of what you have over here. The game looks great, the game looks beautiful, love the art, love the presentation. As far as should you back or should you not, will it hold its value? It's hard to say for sure, but looking at their past campaigns, my guess is not. It's always possible this one, does incredibly well and changes, I don't know, anything's possible, but looking at their past campaigns, smaller price games plus shipping in general don't translate well to being worth getting on crowdfunding just because of that extra shipping baked into every single title. Their past games definitely didn't do a great job holding the value in the secondhand market, and so in this one, I'm skeptical this one will as well. Moving on over here, we have Village Pillage. Village Pillage Big Box plus new expansion. 700 backers, 19 days to go, $37,000 raised from Village Pillage over here. This basically coming to you from Bluebird Entertainment and is the newest expansion plus Big Box to Village Pillage. Village Pillage at its core, and I'm not going to get into all the expansions because there's a bunch of expansions to get into, but Village Pillage at its core is a game of basically taking cards and playing them to your left and your right and having the cards clash. So all the players at the table are playing cards left and right and then resolving the effects based on who they played their cards against. That's the core idea of the base game. There's a ton of cards, there's a ton of expansions, things mix it up. We have the newest expansion over here, and we also have a big box as well if you want to go ahead and get into that. It's a Mensa Select winner over here. As far as the pledge levels, we have the big box upgrade for $35. We have the everything new with wood upgrade for $45. Everything new with wood for $45. We have the big box of $49 if you want the. This is all Village Pillage content and expansions for $49, and then we have Village Pillage Fest for $69, which gives you the wooden upgrades as well as everything. This is kind of like all in, absolutely everything for the game, and that's basically the idea of the game. You can check out more. Well, I don't know. I'm saying check out more. As far as should you back or should you not, will it hold its value? If you look on the secondhand market in this one's tricky because it does fall into one of those categories where it's about if you want to get your hands on everything, the crowdfunding campaign is definitely going to be the easiest way to do that. And especially if you're hunting on the secondhand market later, the question is, are you able to get the everything? You're finding someone who's selling the base game. Do you want the big box? Do you want it all? Do you want the wooden upgrades? So as far as ease of access, the crowdfunding campaign is definitely going to be the easiest. In general, this is a game that has done well enough. It's been well enough reviewed, well enough received. So overall, it's one that's a good game. But as far as secondhand market on the game, I'd say overall it's not one that has done a great job holding its value. The biggest issue here is just that trade-off of the ease of access of just getting it all versus trying to hunt it down. So then in that sense, if you want it, I'd probably recommend just going ahead and getting it all in the crowdfunding campaign. But if you're trying to figure out if it's something that, if it doesn't work for you, will it hold its value, I'm skeptical it will. Moving on over here, we have Feudum. Feudum from Oddbird Games. $306,000 raised, 2,332 backers, 18 days left to go. Feudum is going to be the 7th anniversary collector's edition with a bunch of extras. By the way, I don't even know who did this video. I should check. Whoever did this video, if you're going to watch one video today, watch the Feudum video. I thought it was so amazingly well done. Just well done. Whoever, let me see if I can find who can, if we go awards, the team, shipping, partners. Is there a partner for the video? No. Board Game Shot? Maybe it's Board Game Shot. I don't know. I don't know who did the video for the campaign. Whoever did the video for the campaign deserves absolute praise. I thought it was excellent. There's a lot of good videos, don't get me wrong. This one just was different than your typical watch the video. Watch the video. It'll take 30 seconds. It's a short video. Anyways, over here, Feudum over here. Feudum is a game that I'm not going to try to explain. Some games I try to explain, others I don't, because Feudum is a game that is a lot by all accounts. It's well rated, make no mistake. I think it's a 7.6 on Board Game Geek, if I'm not mistaken. It's received a lot of praise over the years. In fact, watch the video. But in general, it's a lot going on in this game. There's a lot going on, and I'm not going to try to explain it for you. You just have to go ahead and look it up yourself, because I don't think I could do a 30-second explanation of what Feudum is. What I can talk about is the actual pledge levels itself. So over here, this game, it's been very well received. It is a longer game. It is not the easiest to table. Lots of rules, lots of all those things. But if you're interested in this heavier experience, then this may well be a solid game for you. As far as the pledge levels, we have $75 for the Feudum Septennial Edition. This is going to give you the game, plus it's going to give you the extras over here. You're basically getting, I believe you're getting it all. I believe everyone, maybe not. Maybe you need to go to, I believe everyone gets the Septennial Upgrade Pack who gets the game. I think, I'm pretty sure. I saw this earlier. I'm pretty sure all these things over here, the Nintendo upgrade pack, the rulebook, the metal miniature over here, the first play marker, I think those are all included in every version of the game. This is just for those who want just those and not the game itself. For the Feudum Centennial Edition over here, we have all the things in the basic game, but you also have the metal coins and the upgraded tokens. For the Centennial Edition with expansion bundle, this is not going to give you the upgraded components. Rather, this is going to be at $50 more than the base game on its own, but it's giving you, I believe, $55 worth of expansions included in the base game box. So effectively, you're getting expansions that would cost you $55 separately, but you're getting them included in the base game box. You don't get the boxes for them. They're included in this bundle over here. So if you want that, we have the Feudum plus Centennial Edition plus the Deluxe plus Rudders and Ramparts for $150. I also should note that the Queens and Catapults expansion is not included in the expansion version, or at least it doesn't seem to be included in the expansion version, because it's not listed over here as we have Windmills and Catapults, Seals and Sirens, Squirrels and Conifers, and there's Queens and something, which we'll come back to. That one does not seem to be included. We have the Deluxe Rudders and Ramparts over here included, so if you want that expansion. We have the All-In, which I assume this includes the Queen and Catapults. What's the deal with the Queens and Catapults? Or is it an offshoot game and I don't even realize it? I also keep calling it Catapults, but I don't think it is Catapults. It's Queens and something. Let's go back to the Queens in a second. So anyways, we have the All-In over here for $200, and then we have retailers for $250. We have a variety of stretch goals and other things unlocked. We have the Metal Clockwork Behemoth and all pledges. We have the Guild Tracking Dice. We have the Queen's Army expansion. Yeah, this is the Queen Army expansion, a solo multiplayer variant that picks you against... Yeah, this one I didn't see included in... It may already be included in some rewards. I didn't see this included in any awards, unless I'm missing something. Like, I don't think it is. It doesn't seem to be. Like, it's not listed here. I wonder if that's a mistake on their end or a mistake on my end, because I'm not seeing that. Anyways, I guess just double check the FAQ. If you are interested in getting that, just double check the FAQ or the comments or something, because I'm not seeing that included otherwise. And that's basically what we have there. And you could add individual components as well as Socks and his newest game, FLEUR, which isn't even out yet, but I guess you can get this as well over here. We have playmats, bits, bobs, all those various things, which brings us to, should you back it, should you not, will it hold its value? And the short version is, it's hard to say because it mostly comes down to the upgraded stuff and whether those things are worth it or not. If you look at the version on the secondhand market, Feudum has had a variety of crowdfunding campaigns with a lot of different pledge levels, which does make these kinds of things a little trickier to try to figure out. But overall, it looks like one that, for the most part, whatever you paid for the game, you're able to get it on the secondhand market for a little bit less. So you are holding a chunk of its value, but definitely not all of it, which means if you're just looking at, you know, the price points on the secondhand market for what you can get over here, it's actually cheaper to get that stuff on the secondhand market right now. But the flip side is they don't come with that metal behemoth and all the extras and all those things, which does change exactly where this is. So just based on how the second market has done compared to prior campaigns, my instinct on this one is that this is one that's similar to what it's done so far. It'll probably hold most of its value. You'll probably lose something on shipping, maybe a drop more than that as well. But overall, it is a well-received, well-liked game, and you are getting new content over here for the game, so that's going to help it have an appeal, even with the second market as it is right now. That's going to be that, which brings us to KUGO. KUGO, a fun flicking game for all ages. 234 backers, 24 days to go, $21,000 raised. KUGO is basically a build-your-own flicking game. Well, to be clear, they do have their own puzzles in the game. The basic idea is you get a bunch of components. You're either getting the KUGO small box or the KUGO big box over here. KUGO Tricks versus KUGO Play, and you are being given a bunch of games with those systems. So they do come with baked-in games as far as ways to recommend, like, you know, set up a little wall on the table, flick things over the wall, try to knock down your opponent's pieces. They're going to have baked-in games, but you can also create and invent your own. It's meant to be just flicking fun on a table surface or whatnot, and just have at it. Either create your own, use theirs, and just have fun flicking things around and trying to win. They have a lot of games over here. You can see like all these various modes that they've come up together. And again, your game, your game, your game. Possibilities are endless. And then we have the quick games as well if you want all of that. And then for as far as, I'm going to scroll down, they have some videos you can check out. Like you can check out this very first game, just get a sense of Castle Catapult. How does it play? Is it something that appeals to you? Do you think you have fun with that? You can go through a few games and see if any of them appeal to you. But as far as the pledge levels, we have $37 for the basic KUGO Tricks. That's going to be the small box version. We have $63 for KUGO Play. And we have $96 for both of those together. It is all wood, and we have various upgrades and deluxifications, $134 for this, or, you know, $169 for the 2x bundle, things like that as we go through it. As far as should you back it, should you not, will it hold its value? I'm skeptical it will, but this is also a weird space. This is kind of like, I'm covering this because it's, I don't know, I like Crokinole, so like I'm interested, I'm intrigued, but it's not really a typical board game situation. These things in general don't have as much of a clear, wide demand for them. My instinct is this is one that will not hold its value, but I should probably put this in the board game adjacent category to begin with, where I usually don't comment on value because I'm usually not as well informed about things that aren't in your typical board game stuff. So let's put an asterisk in this one where I'm guessing not, but it's also a different situation than the things I typically usually cover. As far as moving on, we have one more campaign to go through. We have Backpack Panda over here. 269 backers, 14,000 raised, 24 days to go, and disclaimer, Board Game Co. did do paid content around this game. We have Backpack Panda, which is a hit and roll game for pandas. That's basically the idea. You're going to have a bad panda in the game. You're also going to have the good pandas, the light pandas, and then you're going to have various pandas that also help the bad panda as well. So those are the three categories. We have light pandas, infected pandas, and dark pandas. Dark pandas, the bad panda. Infected pandas support the dark panda, and light pandas build trusted alliances between the players. In the game, you're going to be assigned a role. You're going to be trying to give cards to each other in the game. You're going to have this element of having your own cards in your little envelope, be trading cards, as the light pandas effectively try to last 6 rounds, or sorry, the light pandas try to get the black panda, and the dark panda is trying to last the 6 rounds undiscovered in the game. The game's going to have a standard edition of the game for $40 over here. We're going to have an exclusive edition for $54, which gives you the base game plus the companion expansion and the relative component upgrades is going to be what you get for that $54 exclusive edition of the game. And then we have retail editions over here and retail exclusive and all these various pledge levels as well. As far as should you back it, should you not, will it hold its value? I'm skeptical it will. The price point for a hidden role game is a higher price point in general. If you're comparing this to games like Quest or One Ultimate Werewolf or things like that, this is just at a higher price point for this type of game. There are games that have gotten away with that, like Blood on the Clock Tower certainly has. I don't know if I'm seeing the level of demand or interest in this one for me to be confident that it's going to be one that holds its value overall. If you're interested in the game, by all means, go ahead. I mean, with 269 backers, I think the retail availability and the secondhand market availability on this one is going to be on the lower side, so there is a reason to get that there if you're interested in this one, but I am skeptical it'll hold its value overall on the aftermarket if it's not a game for you. And that is basically what we have over here, which means it's time for our Picks of the Week. Picks of the Week is where I pick 2 games, my personal interest pick of the week, as well as the game I think is most likely to hold its value. For my most likely to hold its value pick of the week, I am going to go with Degenesis, and I will admit that I'm hesitant on this one. I usually do not hesitate on CMON campaigns, but looking at the variety of other crowdfunding campaigns we have today, I still think Degenesis is likely primed to hold its value the most from other campaigns on the table. And then my personal interest pick of the week is going to be Ironwood, which is an easy pick there. Ironwood, as much as I don't know if the pre-order is necessarily worth getting unless you really want those foil cards, the actual game itself is one that I highly recommend you get your hands on if you like 2-player asymmetric games or solo asymmetric games that have 2 different solo modes in it for you to go ahead and go through. I think this is going to be a very good game for a lot of people, but as always, you still have to be the target audience. If this game doesn't appeal to you, then I recommend skipping it, saving your money, and waiting for the next one. And that's basically what we have for our picks of the week. For upcoming campaigns, we have 2 that I'm going to highlight over here. We have Agamonia, which is going to be launching with 2,400 free will fall in the campaign. Return to Agamonia, a game I thoroughly enjoy. Disclaimer, Board Game Co. is doing paid content around Agamonia, but a game I thoroughly enjoy, big fan of it. I should have a review at some point up, hopefully before the campaign. Like, I'm not finishing the campaign before I review it, but I want to get a few more games in, and I should have a review either mid-campaign or sometime along the way. But either way, it's going to be Agamonia launching next week. And then we also have Terraria with 22,000 people following the campaign. This is going to be launching from Paperfork Games next week. Very intrigued by this game. I've played the video game. I'm interested to see how they translate that into a board game form while capturing and holding on to the feel of that game. And that's what we have. Until next time, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. I hope you enjoyed this video, and as always, I hope you have a good one. I don't know why Marvel doesn't use Hulk in more of its advertisements and movies and promotions and trailers and all that stuff. Like, when you think about it, he's basically a giant banner.